Brought to you with the compliments of Carter's General Store and Crumb's Bakery.
Hello and welcome to our National Botanical Gardens. I'm Sherwood McCaskey. As always, thanks for your time. In our last program, we get a sense of why this site was selected. In this week's episode, we will understand what this area affords to all Barbadians and those of you who will come to visit Barbados and enjoy this site. We will also understand what we at times take for granted. So let us now get a better sense of what this space and the garden could mean to all of us. Historian Trevor Marshall begins by crediting our Prime Minister, the Honourable Mia Mottley.
It is due to the foresight and the appreciation for greenery of the present Prime Minister, the Honourable Mia Amor Mottley, QC, and high on her list of items was this environmental space. I think Ms. Mottley in her travels have seen that most countries, not just of the Caribbean region, but of the world, most countries which place emphasis on greenery, right, and the green economy, and the greening or regreening of the earth, they now have established or re-emphasized or upgraded their botanical gardens. You would have seen there's a Hope Botanical Gardens in Jamaica. There's the Gardens and Zoo in Trinidad. Dominica has its botanical garden. St. Vincent has its botanical garden.
I, Mia Amor Mottley, being appointed Prime Minister, do swear that I will, to the best of my judgment.
And within 1 year of taking office in May 2018, in her wisdom, and we applaud her for that, came down on the side of establishing it as a botanical garden. And Ms. Mottley revealed to the entirety of Barbados her plan that this would be utilized to ease the pressure on the National Stadium and Kensington Oval. Kensington Oval was not designed for that purpose, and the National Stadium is too small, but Ms. Mottley decided that this would be utilized to ease the pressure on those places.
This is a dream come true. The beauty of this is that this is central. There are clearly some kinks to work out in terms of transport and park and ride. But having said all of that, a picture speaks 1,000 words. And people are happy. We're not getting the heat that we would normally get at Bushy Park from the asphalt. But we are getting a wonderful breeze coming across Waterford Bottom. It's as good as it gets.
And thus, in 2019, we had your first edition of Soca Royale.
It cannot be overstated that we do live in the tropics. We live a place that occupies and has occupied the psyche of many a people for centuries. For centuries. As far as the idea of, think of the people that live in cold climates that at certain types of the year would have had to survive a winter. We occupy, we live daily that beauty that is Barbados. It will serve as a welcoming to our sensibilities of being here, to ourselves, but also visitors when they do return and they're able to come here. So botanical gardens, coming into the modern context, represent I think what you would most identify with as a tourist attraction, but their origins is definitely with scientific study. So here we are in present day And one could ask, well, what can a botanical garden mean to us today? Well, botanical gardens can represent a study of sustainability in these times, as the environment has increased. Our awareness of what goes on in the environment has been brought close to home with the media. You know, now it's hard to turn on and not see something that refers to climate change.
Barbados will be revisiting its target of being fossil fuel free by 2030 in the next 4 years. Now, this announcement from Prime Minister Mia Motley during a press conference with the President-designate of the 2021 United Nations Climate Change Conference, also referred to as COP26.
We recognize that we are going to have to work further and in 2025 see whether we can hold to that 2030 target of 100% fossil fuel free, or whether we will have to adjust it thereafter again. But at the very least, we believe that we need to reduce the emissions from 7.7 tons per year per person to 2.3 tons as a recognition of our contribution from this small rock in this global community.
It is something that we have become very aware of in our modern societies. So what can botanical gardens mean for us today? Whereas up to the turn of the century and the middle of the 20th century, they represented still a great fountain of knowledge, of study of the various uses for plants, taxonomy and germination of the plants, interbreeding of the species of plants to create hybrids that may have certain advantages, whether it's in food production or their medicinal purposes, which is one here in the Caribbean especially. We have a lot of what they call silent doctors. Whether it's your Cersei bush teas or your papaw leaves for swelling of the joints during when you're fighting off dengue, as well as the usage of the breadfruit leaves for Alzheimer's, as well as soursop leaves. There are many ways in which botanical gardens can continue to furnish us with that information, but more importantly is to help the everyday person. The human eye can readily identify 30,000 different shades of green. It is that one color along the spectrum of Richard of York gave battle in vain: red, orange, yellow, blue, green, indigo, and violet, that they taught us in primary school. It is the color that we can most readily identify. So we have a natural kinship with that which nature can bring us. There are many texts and poetries that speak to nature and the effect that it has on the human soul to tap into with a beautiful botanical garden. So if there's something that can be looked at, the simplest would be the beauty. The beauty that it can convey to a public, to a population, of some of the wonders that Mother Nature still holds in her bosom to be just unearthed, if I could use that correct analogy, would be such that when put on display with a little bit of curated approach where we can show various microsystems, ecosystems, if you will, that would represent, here's waterways and the plants that are associated with waterways and rivers and courses. In many of the major botanical gardens overseas, you will see that they actually have entire displays, enclosed displays, that they've been maintaining for the better part of 300-400 years. So it's not as if to say that they waited for modern technology, but they've created greenhouses that help tropical plants like palm trees and coconut trees to survive in London, in Paris, in New York, in Philadelphia, one of the oldest botanical gardens in America. So a botanical garden would represent a living laboratory, if you will, of how we see our indigenous flora and fauna thrive and how best we can learn from it, but also at the same time coming in to appreciate very highly just how beautiful it can be.
Let us now look at a number of the characteristics in defining a botanical garden. What are found therein? How are they labeled? How are they treated? To do this, we use to find examples of gardens abroad.
One characteristic is that there must be a degree of permanence. And degree of permanence means, speaks to long-term initiatives like the propagation and silvicultural management of woody perennials, because they're going to be there for several years, decades, centuries. So and that speaks to what is some degree of permanence. There must be an underlying scientific basis for the collections, which speaks to conservation of a genetic resource and the preservation. Conservation speaks to how you use that resource. The preservation speaks to the protection of that resource from anthropogenic activities, man-made activities. The underlying scientific basis also speaks to the element of education and research. Another characteristic is adequate labeling of the specimens, so that you consider the nomenclature, which is both the scientific and the vernacular names, and the origin of collection, where the habitat is located. The monitoring of collection is also another feature, and this speaks to both horizontal and vertical growth of the specimen, of each specimen, and the actual health, how it's tolerating or resisting various pests and diseases.
But a national botanical garden can tick so many more of those boxes, as well as provide scientific research, which would be very important for us as a population going forward, especially for the desire to increase our level of knowledge of our background, that which is around us but we may not see all the time. This is extremely important.
There's an element of information sharing with other botanical gardens around the world, not only botanical gardens but learning institutions and the general public.
As a concept, it's one that, although not novel, may represent a great opportunity for this region. So what it represents, certainly as always, is an opportunity to gain that which is most important, which is knowledge. The knowledge that we would be able to acquire as far as techniques for plant husbandry, research techniques, scientific techniques of documentation, record keeping. There are gardens that have had the responsibility of maintaining tens of thousands of seeds over the course of centuries. The same Kew Gardens in England is host to somewhat 50,000 different specimens. There are many countries in this world who have beautiful botanical gardens and have been able to invest some of the best technology there is. Russia, for example, which we would not normally associate with the tropics, has had a tropical exhibit for the better part of almost 200 years, housed in the architecture of the time, which were iron cast and glass houses. In Peru, corn is from that part of the world in South America. So they actually house one of 3 of the laboratories worldwide that have all of the species of potatoes. Should there ever be a near cataclysmic event, we would have all the potatoes, and this is a heavily fortified area where it's been, built to withstand bombs, nuclear bombs, those sort of megatons of scale of damage, just to keep those seeds safe. That technology transferred to Barbados would be of a great boon to our scientific community, albeit it is small and somewhat limited to the University of the West Indies, but certainly would represent, once again, a fountain for aspirational growth in various sectors going forward. Because if they bring so much of that technology here to Barbados, it would only be a matter of time before we're able to learn from it and make use of it to the point where we are then able from there to progress forward with the study of so many of the plants that we call silent doctors around here that may be mistaken for weeds or pests or invasive species. So it can propel us to that next level of scientific research for our region. More information that we can share with our regional brothers and sisters, the better, and collaborations as we seek, as always, to contrast the most negative effects of climate change and some of our other concerns with regards to food security, for food sovereignty. All of that is tied in with what can happen if we have that information transfer by having various nations, or by having an open invitation for nations from around the world to essentially invest.
The point that I made earlier about the exchange of germplasm, seed material, and so on, we have started that program with the Republic of Kenya, the People Republic of Kenya. They have already sent us some seeds, and we propagated those seeds. And we have a fairly large stock now here at NCC. And we are now building relationships with other countries like Morocco and China and so on. So we're expecting seed material or germplasm from those countries shortly.
And we will see that between the information transfer, the technology transfer, and being able to see it every day in its best offering, it will represent a huge, probably not even easily seen at the beginning, a huge step into that more sustainable future, that more at peace relationship with the 21/14 that is Barbados. And dare I say it, I salivate at the thought, because it would be appealing to see thousands of school children and teachers, landscapers, want to be landscapers, come here and just be able to see it in context and see it, okay, this is the kind of companion planting we can do. It's one thing to read about it, it's one thing to see it represented on a screen of a cell phone or a laptop or a computer. It's another thing altogether to see it, right in front of your eyes. And also help reconcile a lot with where we are as part of the diaspora. As Barbadians, we all represent part of the diaspora here. So to be able to see lands that have gone from an industrial usage through colonization to one where we truly honor the words of the national anthem, both as it begins and ends. You know, these fields and hills are now our very own. Well, if the house is yours, why not help to spruce it up and beautify it, put a new coat of paint? And that closing line, where we are guardians of our heritage and craftsmen of our fate. Those are things that, as we seek to craft that fate, once again, a botanical garden like this, for future generation, helps to put the exclamation point on how far we've come and where we can go, whilst at the same time bringing together concept of sustainability and our developmental goals as a relatively young nation, because that is what we are still. Even though our history is many centuries, there are places in the world that their history goes back millennia. So we still have a bit of work to do, but this would be that step forward towards the next level of development for us, in a way that may not always be easy to appreciate or to see at first, but is truly within having a relationship within nature. And so I think what must not be lost is that, well, maybe we're just talking about a bunch of plants. That would be shorting, if you will, the quantity of the bountifulness that is nature once given a hand up, not a hand out. So Mother Nature, when allowed to splendor in all that her representatives, as far as all the animals and all the plants, can represent a beauty. There's some gardens that one can go and Google and look at the YouTube videos. There's one that we were looking at in Indonesia that it's more akin to a theme park. And when you think theme park, you think, you know, the Disneylands of the world and, you know, the Six Flags with roller coasters. This one had lifelike representations of dinosaurs amidst these beautiful botanical gardens with, you know, vines and streaming plants hanging down, and you have riverways and short courseways. You have entire bamboo groves that you can lose yourself in. You know, these bubbling brooks. There's another one in Darling Harbour in Sydney, Australia, that has been transformed into a Japanese garden with accompanying temple and waterfalls and lilies and water ponds. Beautiful, beautiful. And so there's not really enough to be able to say as to just what beauty can be conveyed in words. What would be beautiful to see, however, would be that time when we will have local and regional writers who are inspired once again with the use of prose and poetry to describe the beauties that are here. It may sound a bit romantic, but you know, if we are saying that the environment has to be something for future generations, hopefully it's not just something for them to walk through and look at. That it will continue to inspire. So whether it inspires in the sciences or in the arts, the important part is that it inspires. To aspire is no small thing. It's what we do as humans. So a botanical garden would represent micro ecosystem of that inspiration. Why not? Why not? You know, and from there, like I said, we pass that on to future generations. And within it, all the study of how to maintain it, how to help it to grow, to flourish. And such is what a botanical garden can be here. Obviously, we will not be as advantaged as some of those other areas in the Southeast Asian countries to be able to put on display, you know, huge and exotic amphibians and lizards of all types. However, there can be interesting displays in areas that do house, for example, the world's smallest snake, or many of the birds that used to use Barbados as a transitory point as they flew north to south in our region. So such is the hope of a botanical garden and what it can present to us with regards to the study, the science, and the beauty and art of what is Mother Nature in all her glory, once we put our little hand and effort to assist her on her display. So I imagine that a botanical garden will assist, you know, many, old and young, to find that little bit of serenity, that peace, that sense of being. We are human beings after all. If only but for a minute, but then allow us to branch out from there and, yes, once again take on our daily tasks, knowing that there is such a place where one can enjoy beauty at its best, you know, nature at its best, with all its, you know, somewhat, you know, that between the manicured and the slightly wild. Also in these botanical gardens and many others, they will also house many examples of the many animals that live there. I mean, you go to South Africa, they have a beautiful one there just below a tabletop mountain that, as you would imagine, being on the African continent, has a display of flora and fauna that is truly breathtaking. To be able to see and witness, you know, so many Now, we're not talking about a zoo. We're just talking about animals, birds, exotic birds, and various creatures and that occupy the landscape. As always, we talk a lot about what we have done to take away from her beauty, but I think if we were to embrace her invite to come and give her some attention again, a display just like a botanical garden would just about tick every box with regards to what we could do for us and for future generations of locals and visitors alike. I'm convinced of that.
There's a lovely poem written by a lady whose first name is Dorothy, can't remember her surname, and the poem is quite well known, and it goes, "The warmth of the sun for pardon, the song of the birds for mirth. You are nearer God's heart in a garden than anywhere else on earth." And when I come out into my garden and I sit in this chair and I look up at these magnificent trees with the leaves nearly 100 feet above my head and the blue skies beyond, I think, wow, what a wonder creation is. And gardens are the epitome of nature's beauty.
Oh, how inspiring. That is exactly what the government is trying to create here for you on this site. All for your enjoyment, all for your pleasure. I'm Sherwood McCaskey. Thanks for your time.
Brought to you with the compliments of Carter's General Store and Crumbs Bakery.